Welcome to part 2 of our series on embracing your new normal. Jamie spoke the last time about the basics, and today she's going to get a little more specific and talk about the effective communication. She'll be talking about talking. Whether we're family or friends or caretakers or just acquaintances, we're going to learn how to better communicate with those with this disease. This week in the Greenville News, there was an article about Alzheimer's and memory care, and it said that South Carolina led the nation in the number of diagnoses. Maybe some of you saw the article. So there's no question that this disease has an impact on us here at Knox, and we're so glad that Jamie's going to tell us more about it. All of your faces look familiar. I believe that most of you have been here before. So you already know that Jamie is the program director with the Greenville area office of the Alzheimer's Association. You know that she has her degree in psychology and she's a dementia expert. And 2 years ago she received certification as a certified dementia practitioner. So, at the end, maybe at the conclusion, Jamie will also tell us about what our last part will include, and then that would be the end of this series. Thank you.
Yes, and if you are watching anything on the news the last few days, I'm sure you've heard about the Hunter family over on Altamont. I believe he's still missing. And I'm actually, after this, I contacted a friend who works at Fox Carolina, so I'm gonna do an interview with them so people know that there are resources out there. The next class will be more about behaviors, and one of the behaviors is related to wandering. That's 6 in 10 people with dementia will wander. Even if they've never done it before, even if you don't ever think that they would, they will. And so families, the whole purpose of when I come to things like this, and when I go to the news station, is to let people know that, no one should be ashamed of this disease. And there's a lot of shame, for whatever reason, that comes, and embarrassment that comes with this disease, so people don't get help, and people don't get connected, and people don't learn about the resources that are out there, and until it's too late. So that's kind of what my goal is to have no shame, and well, I usually don't have shame, but to have no shame about this disease, and to seek help, and to get the help, and to find out, could this have been prevented? Maybe not, but maybe. So anyway, so watch Fox Carolina tonight, because I might be on it. So today we're going to talk about effective communication strategies. And everyone in this room communicates every single day, whether it's via text, via email, on the phone, in person, we all talk. Whether or not we do it effectively is another question. My previous job that I had as an ombudsman, which was an investigator for long-term care facilities, I always said that if people could communicate, I probably wouldn't have a job, because there's a lot of just misinformation. We interpret things differently, especially when we text. If you're in a bad mood and you get a text message, you're like, oh, what's her problem? And meanwhile, she just went, okay. And you're like, And in marriage, there's a lot of couples in here, so I'm sure we're all going, We've had a lot of miscommunication here and there. But we're going to talk a lot about that. And one of the things to get across from this class is in communication, it's a 50-50. I'm giving you a message, you're hearing it, you're responding, and we go back and forth. Someone with Alzheimer's or another form of dementia, the communication is now 80-20. So I'm giving them my message, but I also now have to try to interpret what they're saying, even when they're not saying anything. And that sometimes can be tough, because we've been communicating for our whole lives. And now all of a sudden, I'm here to tell you, now you have to change the way you're communicating. Especially if you're communicating with someone with dementia, it's going to be different, and it has to be different. Otherwise, it will just, it won't end well. Next slide. So yeah, so we're just, what I just said, we're going to learn how to decode some of their messages, figure out what it is they're trying to say when they're not saying anything at all. So we all almost have to become little detectives in this matter to figure out, okay, I said sit down, and why are they still standing? Okay, so, and then we're gonna work on those things. Next slide. So I think most of us just assume communication is just talking. But I know that in my marriage, a lot of our issues comes from my tone of voice, and I can't help it. You know, there's a thing. It's like I'm not yelling. I'm just Portuguese. That's me. I'm from Massachusetts, and I talk with my hands, and so my hands are all over the place. My voice sometimes probably sounds, even your facial expression. My son the other day, he was like, "Why are you mad?" I'm like, "I'm not mad." He's like, "Well, your face is doing this." I'm like, "Oh God, crap." And I'm like, and I wasn't even mad. It was just my face was like, So we don't realize what we're doing even when we're not having anything come out of our mouths. So, you know, our body language is very critical. Our tone of voice, our facial expressions, all of that is really how you're going to be communicating with someone with dementia. Because this disease doesn't affect their hearing. They can hear, unless they're hard of hearing already, but they can hear. So when you call their name or you make a sound, no matter what it is, they're going to turn and look at you. But what affects them from how the disease affects them is it takes away that ability for the person to understand what it is that you're saying. So that would be like right now, if I started communicating to you in Portuguese, I can't, so don't worry. But if I started speaking Portuguese and I'm going on and I'm talking and I'm saying, you know, next slide, and we're going, and you're looking at me like, what is this woman saying? Because you all don't understand Portuguese. So, our families, our friends, our people we meet on the street with dementia, they can hear you just fine. They just do not understand most of the words that are coming out of your mouth. And if you are like me, a talker, there's probably a lot of words that are coming out of your mouth and they're just like, I don't even know what she just said. So we have to start, now I'm telling you, okay, now we have to really pay attention to what this is doing. What is my face doing? What is my attitude doing? So if I came in here and I was in a bad mood and I'm like, so we're going to talk about dementia and communicating, whatever. You know, it's like, okay, what is that? So, you know, you have to make sure that what you're saying and doing is kind of all on the same page. So you really have to almost really be cognizant of your own self, making sure that when you're going into the room to see them and to talk to them, you're not rolling your eyes or your hands on your hips, or you're just like, in that tone of voice, let's go, we gotta go. It's like, oh. So they don't really know what you're saying, but they know an anger. They know that tone of voice, so they're going to be scared, even though there's nothing to be scared of. So we have to really, again, focus and pay attention on the things that we don't really think about when we're talking. We're just saying words. And so that is critical, because that's the first thing that they're going to notice is, what is this like? And so when you do get frustrated with them, because they're not listening to what you're saying or asking them to do, or you're just frustrated because you're taking care of your children and you're taking care of your mother now, and you just got a deadline at work, and you know, something fell and broke on the floor, and now you're going into your mom's room to help her get dressed, and you're going in there with an attitude because you've had a bad day. And we do, we have bad days. And so I can't expect anybody to all of a sudden go, oh, it's time to do this. But you literally almost have to do that. You almost have to go, deep breath. I'm gonna put on a big old fake smile, and we're going to do this. And one of the things that, you know, not necessarily a good thing, but a good thing for you if you are a caregiver, and you did make a mistake by going in hurried and aggravated and agitated, and then you kind of started to get into a yelling match with your loved one, you can walk out of the room, take a deep breath, and then come back in a couple minutes later with a smile on your face, and they'll be like, hey. So they've kind of forgotten that. So then we have to work on that guilt and that frustration that we have for our own selves. But that's kind of one of the pros to this disease, is that they are going to forget what you just did 5 minutes ago, so that you can go back in with a smile on your face and start over. Next slide. So in the very beginning stages of the disease, like I said with the basics, the person still looks the same, pretty much is acting the same, may have some things out of character. They're still able to say things that they want. So just because someone gets this diagnosis doesn't mean all of a sudden they can no longer say that they want to eat a ham sandwich instead of the spaghetti. You know, they can choose the clothes that they want to wear. They can say, no, I don't want to go with you to the store. So they can still make decisions and choices and their needs known. It just sometimes might take a little bit longer to articulate those feelings and to be able to kind of get them in to find those right words. I mean, we've all been in the middle of conversation and being able to find those right words. Sometimes we're like, oh, what's the word? And it gets frustrating. And so now I'm trying to think of the word, and now you're chiming in with 70,000 words that you think I'm trying to say, and that's just giving me more messages, and now I'm getting extra frustrated because I'm not stupid, and then now I'm yelling at you. And so now we're fighting because, well, I'm just trying to help. Well, you're not being helpful. And then we just go back and forth, and then there's really no winning. Especially with someone with dementia. You know, you're not gonna win an argument with someone who just doesn't have that capacity to kind of understand and to go, oh, even though yesterday they understood everything just fine and they articulated everything just fine, but today those synapses are not connecting, and so therefore we're not communicating right. But then if I don't, the fact that you all are here learning about this disease is awesome, because most people don't understand what this disease is. They just think old people get it and they forget stuff. As we all know, and as you are learning, it is way more than that. You know, they don't realize that the person can't find those words to use, and even when they find the word that they want to use, sometimes it's not the right word in that context. And especially if I've always been very articulate and, you know, poised in conversation, and now all of a sudden I'm not. There's a lot of frustrations that go along with that. And so people just don't understand that there's so much more to this disease. And one of the things when we do trainings like with staff at facilities, or I've done something similar to this with law enforcement, again, you're going to say freeze, or you're going to say Mr. Jones, and I'm going to turn around, But then now I'm not really understanding what you're saying because you're just saying all these words and you might as well be speaking Chinese because I don't know what you're saying. And so I'm just gonna keep walking, or you're not giving me enough time to hear what you're saying and then try to figure it out, because now you're saying something else to me and now you're doing for me, and I'm not a baby, I know what I'm doing, I know what I wanna say. And so families end up getting into a lot of that, strife and resistance and frustration and aggravation because we just don't understand what this disease is. So as the disease progresses into the middle stage, those words get even harder to find and to try to figure out what it is that the person's trying to say. And so now you're doing a lot more of the almost thinking, okay, what would they have done, or what would they have said had they had the words and the ability to do it. So it can become a little bit tough. And then as the disease progresses, now I'm filling in all the words. I'm giving them all the words. I'm just kind of like what you would, not that you treat someone with Alzheimer's like a baby, but when you have a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old who doesn't have the words to use to say if they're hurting, if they're hungry, I'm just feeling frustrated, We all know that these are feelings that we have as infants, and they definitely continue on into adulthood, but now I can't say it. So, I might just be sitting here regular and we're having conversation and all of a sudden there's just a lot of noise in the background and and you're just talking at me and I'm just getting very frustrated. So if I'm in a conversation without dementia, I can say, you know what, we need to stop this conversation. I need to get a break. I need to get out of this house. I need to just go for a walk because I'm feeling very frustrated and this isn't going to go anywhere in a positive direction. Now I have Alzheimer's, so now I don't have that ability. So now you're talking at me, and there's all this commotion, and I'm feeling very frustrated and anxious, and I can't say it. So what's going to end up happening is I'm going to react. So if I'm having all this anxiety and this feeling and I can't articulate it, then you're going to come up to me and maybe help me get up to get dressed, and I might just hit at you or yell at you or just shut down. And then you're like, I don't understand. Why are they doing that? Well, it's because I can't tell you, please let's stop. So I have to react. So just like infants, when they get upset or frustrated, they cry, they pitch a fit, and we all know, oh, this is what we need to do. But then we don't know what to do with the adult version of that pitch in a fit or that frustration or that sadness, because they've always been able to tell me when they've been mad, sad, glad, whatever. But now they're not, and if I don't understand the disease, I just think they're just doing it to me, and it's not them, it's the disease. Next slide. We can go to the next one because I already kind of said that.
I'm sorry?
You can go to the next slide because I've just, and here's a video.
Communicating in the early stages of dementia with the person with the disease is important. At that time, you still have language as a tool, so you can learn things about what they might prefer as the disease progresses. For example, as the disease progresses, a person might have difficulty finding words. Caregivers often struggle to know what to do in that moment. Early on in the disease, you can ask. You can say, if you ever have trouble coming up with a word, would you rather that I jump in and give you the word, or do you want me to wait and allow you some time so you can find it on your own?
So I suggested that to a family, and the guy goes, well, my wife said that she wanted me to give her the words, but then when I give her the words, she gets mad at me because she forgot that she told me that she wants me to give her the words. And so you do have to laugh. And on this journey, because if you do not laugh, you will be pulling your hair out, slamming your head against the wall. Because it is very frustrating, because what worked 5 minutes ago is probably not going to work 20 minutes from now. And so you, as the caregiver, as the friend, as the family, as the whoever, you're constantly having to rethink, relearn, come up with a different strategy, and that's why learning things, coming to classes, helps, because you're not going to remember every single thing that we're talking about today, but if you just take one thing, and then maybe if you do what you always do and end up with the same aggravating result, then maybe you might go, let me go look at that brochure that that woman gave me and see if there's something in there. And then you try it and you're like, oh wow, look, it worked. Imagine that. Because they do work, you know, the strategies, but we have to remember to use them, which, let's be honest, in the middle of life, we're not, especially when it's stressful, we're not going, oh, let me remember what they said in that class. We're going to do what we always do because we've been doing it our whole lives. But now it's to, when we do it, we get that bad reaction, hopefully we go, okay, let's try this again. And it's every day. You're going to be learning something new about what your abilities are, as well as what your loved one's abilities are. It's constant with just everything in life. So one of the things that we tend to do in society is we're quick, you know, we're like, all right, we're gonna go to the store, we're gonna, you know, go to church, we're gonna do this, and we list an epistle of everything we're gonna do. You tell that to someone with dementia and they only heard we're going to the store. They're not hearing anything else. We need to make sure that when we're communicating in the beginning stages on into the end stages of the disease, that number one, you have their attention. And so, you know, you're not yelling at them from the kitchen and they're in the living room watching TV. And you're like, honey, I told you that. Like, no, you didn't. And I mean, how many times have we done that ourselves? I told you. And it's like, I think things in my head and I feel like I'm saying them aloud, but I'm not. And then you're having that argument, like, you said you were gonna pick up this from the store. No, I didn't. Well, I was saying it when I was in the kitchen. Well, I was watching the football game, so I'm not listening to you. So making sure that you have their attention and their focus on you, and that there's not a lot of distractions kind of going on all around. So it might be we pause the TV, we mute the TV, shut it off, have that conversation, and then let them continue. Being very specific in what you're wanting and asking them without giving a bunch of details. So I kind of joke and say, you know, when you talk to someone with dementia, you need to talk to them like you're a man given directions. You go straight, take a left, and you're there. And not like a woman given directions, which is you're going to go down the road and you're going to see this really cute church, and then there's a house with a white picket fence, and they have a dog outside, and we have all this explanation and description, and instead of saying, you know, you're going to go east and, you know, bang a left. Well, using to me, you tell me north, south, I don't even know what you mean. So again, making sure we're being very direct with what you want them to do. And we almost have to start kind of playing charades. So if I, you know, gave everyone a baseball hat and said, put it on, you would know what it is and you would know where it goes. Someone with this disease may not know what it is, and they may not know where it goes. So they might just start playing with it, putting it down on the floor, you know, pocket, put it on their foot, you know, because they don't really understand what it is. So now we have to change and say, put the hat on your head. So you're showing them the hat, and you're demonstrating, put the hat on your head. And then you give it to them, and then you're going to say the same exact words. Because if you repeat, but you repeat it with other words, you've just given them a whole new command, and they are not following what you just said for the first time. So it's put the hat on your head, give it to them, put the hat on your head, and then they will follow what you're doing. Because now we have to give those more descriptive words of saying hat, head, showing, sit here. And so you're even kind of demonstrating where you want them to go. Because again, I could be speaking to you in Portuguese to tell you to come with me down the hall. You would have no idea what I'm saying, but as long as I have a smile on my face and I have nice body language and I'm not coming at you aggressive, you'll probably follow me to wherever I'm taking you, even though you have zero clue about the words that are coming out of my mouth. But if I came at you and grabbed you and I had anger in my face and I'm like, let's go, and you're like, no. So again, we have to be very careful with our facial expressions and our body language and our tone of voice when we're coming at the person with this disease so that they will want to follow and do for me. Also making sure that you give them some time. We don't have time. We're like, boom, 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 we gotta go. So giving them that time. Put the hat on your head. Count to 5 in your head. Repeat it. Whatever it is, just giving them that, count to 3, count to 5, so that they can kind of process it, and then they might actually be able to do it. Because if you are actually hands-on caregiving for someone, you want that person to be independent as long as possible, so that you are not hurting yourself by, or whether it's physically because you're lifting, or mentally because you're trying to just do everything. So giving them that time to actually respond to you and to do what it is that you're asking them to do will definitely help you. And to just kind of guide them through things so that you can continue to be a caregiver for a longer time. Because if you start doing everything, mentally and physically, you are going to get exhausted. And then what? Who's going to take care of you and him when it's just you doing it? And now you're tired, and now you're getting weaker. So making sure that you're focusing and taking care of yourself. And part of it is to allow them to be able to be independent. So instead of saying, what do you want for dinner? Well, I mean, how many times have we sat and, where do you want to go out to eat? It's like all of a sudden there's no restaurants in Greenville. There's like a million. It's like, what do you want to eat? You're like, so they can't, so it's just kind of like that. If you think about your thought process of when someone goes, where do you want to eat? And you're like, blank slate, that's kind of what's happening with them. So do you want a ham sandwich or a turkey sandwich? So you're giving them choices, but you are not giving them a million choices. Do you want to wear this shirt or this shirt? So it's this or this. And it will help you, and then it helps them feel that they're independent and that you're not doing everything for them and, making all the decisions for them. And making sure that you are, again, you're directly communicating to them, and at that time, when I've done these programs for like the CNAs and facilities, one of the things that they said is, I allowed the person, a couple of seconds before I said anything else, and she's like, it was amazing to see how much easier it was, because they did understand what was being said it was simple, concise, direct, and they had a couple of seconds to actually process what was being said. Next. So we like to assume, and especially if it's like a spouse, you know, you're like, oh, he'll have this, he'll have that, and that may be kind of how that relationship is, so then it kind of works out. So making sure that, you know, when, you know, don't just assume that just because they have this disease that they no longer have a voice, because they still have a voice, and they are still communicating with you. It's just they're not necessarily communicating with you the way that they always have been. So, you know, now I may not be able to tell you, you know, you look very pretty today in that outfit like I always used to, but now I might just kind of smile or kind of pat at you. And that's just my way of saying you look nice. Or, and so then we have to kind of look at all those different ways of the non-communication that's happening. Next. So in the middle stage, you know, my thoughts, my words, my ability to really articulate my feelings are they're slowly going. And so again, now you have to be a detective to try to figure out what it is that I'm telling you. So it might be that I'm sitting down to dinner and it's my favorite and you prepared it and you're excited and I'm just sitting there, you know, poking at it, looking at it, or I get up and walk away and now I'm upset because I cooked all day and this is your favorite, why you're not eating it. And I now, with this disease, I can't tell you, my stomach has been really just not feeling good all day. And it just, normally I would just get some Pepto-Bismol or some Tums, but instead I'm now just salty because I feel like there's acid in my stomach. And now you're trying to get me to eat, and now I'm yelling at you now, or pushing at you, or throwing the food off because I don't want it. Not that I don't want to eat it, I'm not feeling good, but I just can't tell you I'm not feeling good. So again, we have to start to try to figure out, okay, well I did notice that at breakfast you didn't eat this, and at, you know, lunch you seemed a little, you know, tired, maybe something's going on. And so we have to try to figure out, okay, what could it be? It could be like if right now, if you had a tag sticking in your shirt and that was bothering you, you would be able to itch, remove the shirt, cut the tag out, you know, whatever. Someone with this disease, they just have this awkward, nasty, yucky feeling, and I don't know where it is that's really bothering me. I can't pinpoint it, but I'm just aggravated, and I'm on edge, and now I'm reacting poorly to you being sweet to me. Again, as this disease progresses, that ability to say those things are starting to diminish. Another would be, especially, I think I had mentioned last time, you know, making sure that we're, you know, drinking enough fluids, water, because in the senior population, urinary tract infections are, they're awful. But it puts a person into a cognitive tailspin. And there can be a lot of behaviors that come along with that. I can't tell you that every time I go to the bathroom it hurts, and I've gone to the bathroom 1,000 times in the last 5 minutes. I'm just aggravated and I'm in pain, and so now you're coming to get me to go for ice cream or to help me go to the bathroom or whatever. And now I'm smacking at you because you're going in the area to which it hurts, but I can't tell you that it hurts. I just know that it hurts, and I don't want you going there. And so, again, there's a lot of that trying to figure out what that person is telling you. Sometimes it's easy. It's like, oh, she hasn't done this or whatever, and then other times it's really hard. if you do notice a major change in behavior or communication, making sure that you talk to the doctor to see if there's anything going on. Because a lot of times, the person, especially further along in the disease, they may not have a fever, even though they're sick with a urinary tract infection. So don't just assume, oh, they don't have a fever, they're fine. You know, making sure that you have to kind of advocate and sometimes tell people and the physicians what needs to be done so that your loved one can be taken care of. Next.
I would advise couples, and I usually do advise the caregiver who comes to the group and is caring for a spouse, that you take your time. Always count to 3 before you respond, because it gives you time to think about your answer and what's going on. Generally, in a marital dispute, it's quick. It's back and forth. You're quick to give an answer. When they've been diagnosed, to sit back and say, okay, you're supposed to be the one that's reasonable here. Let's change how we do this, because there's only one thing you can control, and that's you. You cannot control them and their process.
That's perfect. It's the only thing that right now and on that journey, the only thing you can control is you. And sometimes our first reaction isn't always the best reaction. So then you just take a minute and you start fresh. And it's constant learning. Learning new strategies, learning new ways, doing things you probably thought you could never do, wouldn't do, couldn't do, and here you are all up in it. You know, a family member said that every morning her mom would just kind of give her a hard time to get up and go to the bathroom and get ready for the day. And we just started talking, and I said, talking about like songs when she was little, and she's like, oh, my mom used to sing You Are My Sunshine to me in the morning when she would get me up. And so I was like, why don't you start singing that as you're waking her up? Because let's be honest, who wants to wake, I mean, everyone wants to wake up because we don't wake up. It's a whole different topic. We all want to wake up in the morning, but nobody really wants to get out of bed sometimes. It's like nice and cozy, and you're just like, And, you know, then someone's coming in and they're flipping the light on and they're like, let's go. It's a whole day, and you're like, shut up. And so you're going to have an attitude when someone's waking you up that way. But if someone's coming in and they're, you know, singing that song, and you're like, oh. And then she goes, and my mom started singing the song with me, and now she, you know, she's like, it doesn't work every day, but most of the days are good, because we're singing the song together, and she's getting up and getting ready for the day, and it's not a struggle anymore. So again, not everyone's going to come in and be like, you are my son, you know. You do what works for you, and what you think is going to especially be for your loved one. And even if you can't sing, they may tell you to stop. Just keep on going, and you will have a laugh, because that is so important, is to laugh and have that communication of laughter, and even the communication of holding hands, you know, especially when it's your spouse that's affected with this disease. We, you know, as a caregiver, we're like, okay, is his face clean? Is his shirt on right? Does he have this? Hairbrush? You know, we're taking care of all these things, and then we forget to sit and just hold their hand. And so, you know, we go from hand holding to hand washing, and then we just kind of forget about the hand holding. So making sure that even that, like even a hug, that I think is like one of the best ways to communicate. Unless it's a weird, creepy person, you're like, do the side hug. But hugging, how awesome is it to get a hug when you're happy and it's a great hug of enjoyment and you're like, yay, or when you're like super sad and someone hugs you, how it's like, is that really And we forget to do that when we're in the throes of caregiving. One of the things that is important is to make sure that you are getting their attention. And especially as this disease progresses, you want them to see you. So, you know, a wave, hey mom, you know, and say who you are. And don't go, do you remember me? Do you know my name? Don't do that. Because I usually don't know someone's name. So don't ask me now. Don't ask me later. So it's, hey Janice, it's Jamie. Or if you're the daughter, or, you know, hey mom, it's your daughter Jamie. You could even throw in your favorite. So you're identifying them so that you're using whatever name they use. So if it's your mother, you're saying mom, so she knows, okay, this must be a kid of mine. Or if it's a friend, and it's a longtime friend, and her name is Catherine, but we call her Kitty, let's just say. And you're like, hey Kitty. And it's like, oh, this is a person that really knows me because they're calling me by my nickname. You know, so we're saying their name, or whatever you call them, and you're saying who you are. It's your friend Jamie, it's your daughter Jamie, it's your wife Jamie. So you're throwing in those identifiers so that they're not trying to have to figure out who are you. And they will be like, okay, so this is a family, this is a friend, and so there's that connection. So you want to get connected, and you want them to see you talking to them. That is definitely important. How many of us, when we're having a conversation with someone, and if they have their head down on their phone, or they're doing something, you're like, look at me, pay attention, focus. We do that all the time. And my husband's like, I'm listening. I'm like, no, you're not, because you're not looking at me. Right here, focus on what I'm saying. And so the same thing is even more critical that you do that with someone with this disease so that you know that we're both on the same page, or at least trying to get there. Making sure that you don't argue. That is sometimes hard for families to do, especially if the individual's saying things that maybe didn't happen, or that's not exactly how they happened. So of course, we're, you know, all historians are like, that is not how it happened, you know it. And so we're going, you know, and now it's like, no it didn't, yes it did, and you are not going to win, ever, that argument, ever. You know, if they're saying, where's my husband? Husband's been long deceased for 30 years. You don't need to let them know that husband's dead. Just be like, oh, do you think he could be at work? Or, so it's okay. It's called a therapeutic fib. It's a little white lie. You can cross your fingers. We already have an agreement with Jesus and God that we can do this so that we can continue to be caregivers and not lose our minds. You're going to have to find a way to say the lie, the therapeutic fib, if it makes you feel better. Because if you're arguing, if you're correcting, if you're telling them that they're deceased, now they're reliving that sadness as if it was the first time. So figuring out a way on how that's going to work with you, your family, and your friends. But you're never going to win if you tell them exactly. Also, if you have like a doctor's appointment or a family coming to visit or anything, do not tell them until it's pretty much time to go. Because if you tell them on Saturday night, you have a doctor's appointment next week, guess what you are going to hear all the way up until the doctor's appointment next week. Are we going to the doctor's today? Is the doctor's appointment? Is the doctor's appointment? So you would never tell a child you're going to Disney in the fall. You do not tell a person with this disease about an event that's happening weeks later, days later, because that's just going to be something that's going to be on their mind and now on yours. So just kind of being careful with that. And let's see. Yeah, and taking your time and watching your tone. That is definitely a very important thing, and it's mentioned throughout this thing multiple times. I say it all the time because we usually don't take time because we're in a hurry. We have to hurry up to get to this, to get to that, to do this and to do that. And so we don't take our time. But it's so important. So whether it's you getting up a little bit earlier so you have some time, or it's planning things a little bit later, so you do have to kind of like really adjust that ebb and flow of what your normal life once was. Next.
She could sense my frustration because occasionally I would lose my patience and I would bark at her. Why are you asking me that question again? I just answered that question 2 minutes ago. And then she would get frustrated because, you know, she was very old school and she's like, don't disrespect me. And I didn't ask you that question 2 minutes ago. It's a new question. So phase 2 of our relationship was like, okay, that's a new question. I'll answer it again.
And that's sometimes way easier said than done. But as long as you can get that knowledge into your head that it's not the same question for them. It's literally a new question. That it's just to have a little bit of the knowledge of this disease can help. Not gonna make it always easy. You know, I teach this stuff and I screwed up a lot with how I talk to my children, how I talk to my husband, because I'm a human. And sometimes I don't take the time to go, oh, maybe I should have said that a little bit nicer, or maybe my face should have not looked like this. It's hard. It's very hard. And when you're seeing someone that was once this person who's now on like this decline, there's a lot of frustration and sadness and anger on your part that you're working through and dealing with, and sometimes it comes out that way. So and like I said, we're not all going to be amazing communicators after we leave here, but hopefully the next time you go, okay, let me try it a different way. And so a lot of times the things that the person is saying isn't necessarily what they're wanting. What do I mean by that? So typically in the middle stages, towards the end, usually the individual might be in a facility, or even they might be living with you. And I want to go home. I need to go home. That's one of the biggest things. Or I need to see my mom. I really need my mom. And I need to go home because my mom, you know. And there's this anxiety and need for that to happen. And you're like, Mom, you are home. This is, you know, sometimes it's even in their home that they've had for 40 years. You're like, you are home. It's like, this isn't my home. It's not that they're necessarily wanting to go home. A lot of times it's that feeling. How do you feel when you are at home? We feel warm and safe, and comfortable and loved. And a lot of times that is what they're actually trying to say, is I want to go home. It's not that I want to go to a place. I just want that feeling of being at home. So it may be that and this is especially tough when people place someone in a facility, because then now I'm visiting and Grandma's saying I want to go home, and I'm like, I gotta take her home. She has to come home with me, and how am I gonna do it? I can't do it. It's too stressful. Grandma doesn't want to go home. She just wants that feeling. So something may have upset them, something could have bothered them. So it could be a million things that they're really wanting. So you start to just kind of ask questions. You want to go home? So you're saying their words back at them. So they go, okay, she heard me. And then you're like, can you tell me? Where is your home? What color were the walls in your room? What was your favorite thing in your home? So you're asking them, and they may look at you and go, hey moron, I don't want to talk about the color of the walls, I want to go home. And it may be, okay, we're going for a ride. Or we're going to put something on TV, we're going to distract them. So sometimes they're right, you feel like, okay, I got this, and then they're like, why are you asking me all these stupid questions? That's not what I'm asking for. So then you're like, oh, okay, what do I do now? So then we have to try to find a way to redirect and distract with another something. But a lot of times it is just the, probing them for that. Oh, you loved your mom. Yeah, was your mom sweet? How did your mom make you feel when you were sad or whatever? So you're, again, talking about the mother and getting them to kind of engage in a different way. And then maybe if they might say something, yeah, we would feed the horses. And then we're like, horses, oh my gosh, I love horses. Did you ride a horse? So now we're off the mom, off the home, we're on to horses, and maybe we're doing something else completely different. So looking behind that emotion that is in the words. And again, guess what that's going to do? It's going to take some time. And sometimes we don't have the time to probe, and we're like, you're home, I gotta go, I gotta do this. So we have to, again, watch what it is that we're doing and saying and looking at those feelings. And a lot of times it's just a brief answer. You don't need to get into the epistle of why you're doing what you're doing or where you're going and when you're going. It's like, in just a minute, yes, no, like just very quick, brief, simple answers. Okay, next. Ooh, that P word, patient. Again, it's another word for taking time. Making sure that you are limiting those distractions that are around. So if there's a lot of commotion going on, you want to really be able to shut that out and have that conversation with them. And then a lot of times you end up communicating in other ways. So when I would do this for like a Stevens ministry, they're like, well, the people that we visit, they don't talk. They just kind of sit there. And I'm like, okay, well, you can read, right? Yeah, good, okay. How about you read the newspaper, read the Bible, read a magazine, read whatever it is that they like. Look at pictures. I always encourage families to kind of, make a little scrapbook of some important people so that when people visit, they can flip through a scrapbook and then there's no guessing who's that, because it's already written on there, me and cousin Johnny at the beach. And so now we're having a conversation about this with a little bit of description. So I'm not trying to figure out what's going on in that picture. You can communicate by listening to music, singing songs. Even someone who has no verbal skills any longer, a lot of the times they are able to still sing their songs that they love. There was a lady who had, she had aphasia really bad, and she would just go do, and then that's all she said. She would sing, they would play the piano, Amazing Grace would come on, and she sang the words. Like, there was no do, it was Amazing Grace. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, I didn't even know she had these words. So there's a million ways that we can communicate without using our mouths. Next. So I kind of already put, said a lot of this, but it's really making sure that you're limiting those distractions, taking that time, and just not argue and not criticize. That's not the way we do it. That's not how you're supposed to do it. That's not what you should say. That's not, to just go, okay, this is what we're doing. And just move on. Because you are just going to hit your head going, oh my goodness, this isn't going anywhere, this isn't, and we have these expectations of what things are supposed to be, and then when they're not, we get disappointed, and then that is usually pretty reflective, obvious. So like when I have my connections events, I always tell the families, I'm like, I have it planned out of, kind of what we're doing. I'm like, but I have like zero expectation of what this day is going to be like. I'm like, yes, I want to pot plants. But will we get to that? Maybe not. Will there be dirt everywhere? Probably. But no expectation, so that no matter what happens, I'm happy because something was done. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in structure and this is how, and this is the way, that we have put too much expectation on ourselves and on the individual. So if I went to church all day today, and then and then we met for people afterwards, probably by the late afternoon, they're done. They cannot keep it going. Their ability to grin and bear it is no longer. So then we're gonna take them to dinner, and now they're kind of causing a scene because they're getting frustrated and they're tired, and just like you wouldn't take a 5-year-old to dinner at 8 o'clock at night, you wouldn't take someone who has dementia after carting them around, keeping it together all day, to dinner at 5 in a public place, unless your expectation is going to get shot down very quickly. And then now I'm mad, and then they're upset, and we're all mad, and everyone we're with is like, and now it's just an awkward thing. So knowing those limits. Next. So I think we sometimes forget to just go in on their reality. If I think this is the, beach in Jamaica, let me think that this is the beach in Jamaica. Because let's be honest, reality isn't so much fun most of the time. So if I'm in this certain place, in this certain era, or I think that you're my cousin Sue, just be cousin Sue. Don't say, no, mama, I'm your daughter. And then now it's like, oh, how do I not know that you're my daughter? So now I have all these emotions that are going on in my head because how do I not know that this is my daughter? And how awful is that? So, nope, you be whoever they want you to be. And a lot of times what happens is if it's your mother and then your daughter comes in, she assumes the daughter is you and not her granddaughter, because one of the last memories and images of her child is when her child was a child. If they're, a lot of times it might be all these bugs on the ceiling. Well, we know there's no bugs on the ceiling, but my vision is impaired. My ability to go, okay, that's probably not bugs. Let me look a little bit closer. Oh, it's just the holes in the tile. I think they're bugs. So you need to act as if they are bugs and go along with me. If I see snakes, well, it might be that it's a cord. If I'm like, oh, all these monkeys outside in the tree, look at them all. Well, it may not be monkeys, it may be squirrels, but so it says, no, mama, it's a squirrel, it's not a monkey. Well, let it be monkeys. And then you know what, you're gonna go, oh, I wonder if they got out of the zoo again. And just go on that journey. So you basically you're gonna be an improv actor now. So just to go along with it, because every time you correct them, then it's like, you know what, I'm just probably not gonna talk anymore. Because every time I open my mouth, I'm saying something, and that person keeps telling me it's not whatever it is that I'm saying, so I'm just gonna stop. We don't want them to stop, we want them to keep. So we're gonna go along. Yep, tons of monkeys outside, look at them all. I wonder if the zookeeper will come and get them and put them back in their cages. So just, again, going along with it. And that, I think, sometimes is hard for families because we're like, no, that's not what it is. It's this. And we're holding on to the person who once was and not enjoying who they are now. So finding those moments, there's a book called Moments of Joy, and it's figuring out, okay, this isn't what my expectation was with my husband, but here we are. So let me find the joy in this. Let me laugh, even though it's really not that funny, but we have to laugh because he's laughing. So I'm gonna laugh with him. And when a lot of times they might not be able to say the words that they want, and then they start laughing, so you're like, oh, okay, so he's telling me a joke, I'm laughing with you. So it's just where the normal you thought is now this new normal, and so we have to try to make the best with kind of what we got, and to not hold on to the what was, because we're here now. We need to be in the now and enjoy those times together in the now. You can reminisce and talk about what was, but not to hold on to it so tight, to enjoy what is right in front of you. Next. And so I kind of already mentioned this, but one of the things is to use the 5 senses when you're talking to someone, especially in the later stages. That is definitely something that you'll be using more of because the words are no longer. So it's, taste and, and you can give them things that like they loved so that, then it can maybe bring up a memory of when they were little and, their mom made chocolate chip cookies. And they just love chocolate chip cookies. And so now that's how we're going to communicate. We're communicating by eating. Who doesn't love that? We're going to communicate by listening to music or watching a movie that they loved. We're communicating through touch. So it might be that you even get some of the children's books that have like the different textures, and then you can be like, oh, feel how soft that is. I remember my cat, and now we're bringing up things from that. Ooh, this is all rough and scaly. Remember when Tommy brought that turtle in the house? And now we're communicating. You're doing the communicating, but they're doing the touching, and hopefully that kind of brings up. One of the best ways to communicate is with just listening to their favorite music. And there's a whole thing that I think you can see it on YouTube, but it's Alive Inside, and it's this whole documentary about how music kind of just sparks something in an individual with cognitive issues. And that's partly because in the rhythm section of our brain where that's stored, that is in the part of the brain that doesn't really get touched until the very, 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 very end. So that rhythm is always there, that beat, that music. It is truly amazing. And so in this documentary, there's a man who just is kind of sitting there, not really communicating, and then he's listening to, I don't know, not Neil Armstrong, that was the astronaut.
Neil Diamond.
No, not Diamond, it's an Armstrong, Louis Armstrong. Somebody, play the trumpet. So he's listening to this, and then all of a sudden he's just sitting there, and his foot starts tapping, and then his eyes light up, and then he is talking and communicating, and that can maybe start to stir up some memories and some conversations. So I do have that DVD. I can bring it here one time and watch that. It's truly magical. Like, you know, music and the effects it has on humans is amazing. Because if we were playing, you know, when you go to a funeral, you know, it's the sad music, you know, the bagpipes, tears, it's awful. Because it's a funeral. But if you're, you know, at a party, you're not going to play that music. You're going to play upbeat music and fun music. So think about how music sets you in the mood. You know, when you go to a nice restaurant, you know, they're not going to have heavy metal blaring. You know, it's soft, nice music, setting the atmosphere. Same thing with this. Next.
I know that my mom feels aggravated. I know that she feels alone. I know that she feels confused. And I know on any given day, I don't know if I've made it better for her. I try. In these later stages, I've come to recognize that being really aware of the 5 senses is really important. Touch seems to give her a great deal of comfort. I know when I come over, I'm going to brush her hair all the time. My husband noted to me recently, he said, you know, you should see the look on your mom's face when you're brushing her hair. She's just happy. She's just happy. She doesn't say a lot. And I do it for a long period of time. I comb it, I braid it, I do funny things with it, but it just allows me to just be with her in a way that makes her feel comfortable.
And she's communicating with her mom. You know, now if you brush your loved one's hair like my mother brushed my hair as a child, it's not very nice. So what is it? How are we going to use the 5 senses to communicate with that person? One thing that is interesting to when someone is feeling very agitated and so forth, a lot of times just putting some pressure just on their shoulders, just to kind of press down a little bit and just be like, it's okay, we got this. It's like sending another signal to their brain so they might not be so focused on what's happening. And it's not always instant, but it definitely can help. And it can help especially when you're trying to get your loved one to do something. So say you're trying to get them to eat and you're having to do it for them. So instead of feeding them, you can put the spoon or a fork or whatever in their hand. You're sitting on the side of them, and now you're holding their hand. So they're doing it, you're just kind of guiding them. And then a lot of times it's like, you know, it might be a little awkward. So if you have that pressure, you know, you have your hand on their shoulder, they're focusing on that, and they don't even realize that you're feeding, or you're brushing their teeth, or you're combing their hair, because you're keeping this sensory piece focused on, that they're focused on. So it's like, just like those little things that, you know, we don't think about. But it definitely can help. But that definite pressure on the shoulders, tell them just to kind of relax, you got this. Don't tell a woman to calm down, men. So if you're taking care of someone, don't say calm down. Because for sure, we're not going to calm down. So this just gives you some examples that you can do with touch, and it can be anything. Next slide. And so, you know, say if I didn't like painting, like, well, I'm not going to give them watercolors, they're not going to paint, he doesn't like that. You don't know, just sometimes just do. Do, and be present, and not worry so much about the process. You know, the goal is time together. Maybe create something pretty on a piece of paper, maybe not, but you're spending that time together. Do we have paint all over us? Yep. Is it all over the table? Yep. Guess what? It washes off. Who cares? So to not get so caught up in that structured, detailed life that we have and need, and to just be present with them. And so, you know, getting things that they like. So if someone liked jewelry, you know, you have maybe some magazines with jewelry in it, and that's what you're looking at. I hate jewelry. I don't want to look at, well, guess what? We as caregivers, as the people, we are now doing things that we don't always like. And we're just going to go with it, because this makes them happy. And if they're happy, I'm happy. And then if I'm happy, everybody in the world can be happy. But just doing those different things, break out the photo albums. You know, I'm sure they're collecting dust somewhere. I don't think I have any photo albums after my son was born. They're all on the computer or my phone. So scroll through your iPad. Look, you know, and it can help jog those memories. Next slide. And it's the simplest things: music, listening to a book on tape, reading to them. What is it that is going to be a way that you're communicating with them? And a lot of times, because again, they don't necessarily understand every single thing that you're saying, and in the later stages, they probably don't really understand a lot of anything that you're saying, but they understand this. They understand your face. You know, do you look agitated sitting there? Are you bored? Well, they're not talking back to me. Well, read your grocery list to them. Just hearing your voice or a voice is so critical. If you're visiting people in nursing homes and things like that, a lot of times just that holding their hands and just, you know, lightly, you know, caress their arm, a lot of times they're not getting any of that. The only touch they get is for care. And so just to hold their hand, and then that may be how your visit is you're just sitting there holding their hand. And again, just being there, reading your grocery list, but they're feeling your presence. Next. So through smell, you know, I mean, you can smell a cologne and be like, oh, that was I remember a boyfriend who took a bath in that stuff. Or, oh, you know, grass clippings, you know, he used to mow the lawn all the time. So getting little baggies of different things that they can see, and then they can kind of smell it, and then that can maybe jog a memory, or, you know, what have you, and you can kind of start talking about those things. So it could be the simplest things. Next. You know, just enjoying some ice cream, a cupcake, whatever. As long as it's safe for them to eat, then have at it, and then just enjoy that. You know, especially if you came from a large family and you would sit at the table and you would eat, and there was a lot of talking, and then you still sat there even after you were done eating. A lot happened around a dinner table. And so to kind of embrace that. Next. So again, just to kind of sum it up, it's join their reality, because you get to go on a little road trip every now and again, a walk down memory lane. You know, don't argue with them. You're not going to win, and then you're just going to get frustrated, and then they're going to get frustrated at you, and then now you're arguing, and now you're mad, and you've yelled at them, and you've walked away, and now you have guilt. So not only were you just mad, now you're guilty, and that's a horrible feeling, and sometimes that's hard to wash off. So, you know, yep, That's exactly what happened, sure. We did that. It was great. Yep. I'm your cousin Sue. I'll be whoever. And just going along for it. The therapeutic fib, you will still get into heaven. Don't worry, you can do it. You have to do it. You will need to do it in order to just to be, just to exist. So, looking at that, looking at the emotions that are behind their requests. I want to go home. Sometimes it's not home. It's that feeling of home. So getting them to maybe talk about that. Or, look around and be like, okay, you know what, I noticed he's not doing these things that he usually does. Something might be going on with him. He can't tell me that he's not feeling good, but let's try to assess what's going on and kind of rule out what could possibly be happening. Taking your time and recognize that your mood, your actions speak way louder than your words. Your words don't always really even mean anything, but what you're doing, how you're doing it, what this is doing, that is how you're going to get them to do what you need them to do. If you're coming in hurried and frustrated and aggravated, they're going to think it's them, like I did something to them, or why are they mad at me? And we all have that fight or flight. So I'm either going to run from you or I'm going to fight you. So making sure that we do take that minute and fake it till you make it. You just put on a smile and let's try this again, shall we? And it's a constant, over and over. Next.
Taking care of yourself while you care for somebody with disease not only impacts your own health, but it really can impact the person with disease. So for example, if you're not getting enough sleep, you might be easily irritated, which will then sort of spill over to your interactions with the person with disease and maybe being short with them, which then might cause them to get frustrated. So it's not only important to take care of yourself for your own health, but really for you to really be a good caregiver.
Taking care of yourself. That's the thing that a lot of us have sometimes a difficult thing to do, because if I take care of me, now I feel guilty because I can't do this, or we used to do that together, or I feel like I need to spend all my time with them. And yes, I mean, in life, we're not guaranteed tomorrow, and we should spend each day as if it were our last. But in reality, it will be your last if you don't take care of yourself. So we have to make sure, as caregivers, you are taking care of you. You're taking, whether it's 5 minutes, 50 minutes, 1 day a week, 5 days a week, whatever, you're doing something for you to relieve your stress from just the everything, so that you can, be rejuvenated and refreshed and to be able to continue to take care of them. Because like he said, if you're hungry and tired and, everything that you thought was supposed to be is now no longer, so now you're frustrated. Even if you're not in a bad mood, your son's gonna go, Mom, why are you in a bad mood? I'm not mad. This is my face, apparently. So making sure that, what are we projecting? Are we taking care of ourselves so that we can be a better caregiver for a longer period of time? The Alzheimer's Association has a 24/7 helpline, so you can call. They have licensed social workers that you can have like a care consultation with them, and they'll call you back so you can just get these things off your chest. Because not everybody is a support group goer. but I don't mind talking on the phone, so let me call and vent a little bit, and they're gonna talk to me, and guess what? Now it's off my chest, and it's a little less of a burden. So we have our 24/7 helpline, we have online resources like we have All's Connected, so it's a online community of caregivers, people with the disease, without the disease, just kind of chatting with each other. We do have support group meetings, we have educational programs, we have our events for the people with the disease. We have our respite program, which is a voucher that would pay for home care to come in or a short stay in a facility, so that you can get a break. Then the next question people say is, well, my husband won't allow anyone in the house. He doesn't want a caregiver. Well, nobody wants I mean, I would love for someone to take care of me, but nobody wants a caregiver. And you don't want to admit that you're in need. But if you want to continue to be the caregiver, you need a break. And you don't have to say it's a sitter, it's a caregiver, it's a nurse. If it's a young person and you have a younger daughter, you're like, oh, it's Jamie's friend. She's coming to hang out for a little bit. It's our friend. So I'm introducing them as a friend, so they're gonna be like, oh, well, I guess I have to put on that socially appropriate mode, because they can do that. And now we have a friend staying. You know, one of the ladies said she has a friend that comes over to watch a movie, because she doesn't have that movie at home. So she comes over and watches the movie. So it's therapeutic fib, it's keeping her sanity, and he's there. And now he loves when the girl comes, because they'll play cards and do things. We have, so making sure that you're utilizing that. It's a great resource for you. And then we also have our Medic Alert Safe Return bracelet. It is not GPS, but it is a bracelet that would have the person's name, saying that they're memory impaired, with an ID number and an 800 number. So no matter where in the United States you go, if your loved one happens to leave your side, because even though they're always right there, that one day, all of a sudden they're gone, and we can't find them. So that would have a number on it so that they would be able to call. It gets connected to the Alzheimer's Association, it gets connected to the caregiver, so that this way they can be found easier. We can get people connected with GPS activated type things. We have resources for that as well. So to make sure that you're utilizing those things. And to get the help, the support, way before you need it. If you've been diagnosed with this disease, you need it. If you're in the middle of this disease, you needed it yesterday. So to make sure that you're getting that connections, the support of others, so that you can know about other things, because you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of people don't really know about this disease. Next. Any questions? Yes.
Jamie, as it happens, today in the Guay magazine and newspaper, there was a big article about Alzheimer's. And for all of us here, there was a website, I think it was alls.org. They were talking about a test, a mental acuity test that you can take to see if you are or where you are. What is that test like? And how long does it take?
I'm not sure about that one, but there's one, it's the, I think it's called the mini mental exam, and it's like 20 questions. On a bad day, I might not score very high, because it's like counting backwards by sevens from 100. spelling world backwards, which is fine, but I might need to write it down, because that's how I learn, like, that is my way. You know, but but basically it's, the main gist of that is, what's today's date, you know, where are you, you know, that kind of stuff. There is another one, like we have the Alzheimer's Association, it's for physicians, I believe. It's a Alzheimer's like disease pocket guide, and it's an app. So, and on there is like the test, like some of the tests that like the physicians can do. So, and anybody can download it, and it's free. So if you wanted to, you can click on that and just do it, just to kind of see. But a lot of the times there's a variety of things. So there's like the quicker state mini mental, then there's one I think it's called like Mocha or something. Like it's another longer one. And it's like how many animals can you name with stripes or something. So, but it's basically, if it's keeping yourself alert to any changes, and it's more than just forgetting things, because we all forget things, but am I all of a sudden having like an abrupt personality change? Was I once very social and now I'm not? You know, am I not showing empathy for you? Like, you called me from, I had a lady, she goes, one of the things that she noticed with her husband was she had a bad asthma attack and was in the ER. And she called her husband and they wouldn't let her drive home because they gave her all kind of medication. So she called them, she's like, oh my goodness, she's like, I'm in the ER, I need you to come get me. I had this bad asthma attack, and he's like, well, I need to take a shower. Then he just hung up the phone. And she's like, okay, that's a little weird. 7 hours later, when she finally got him back on the phone, he showed up. Now, that's not normal behavior. So it's doing things like that that kind of keeps, and most physicians, if you go to your doctor, you're like, oh, you know, I want to, you know, do the mini mental. It's going to be the quick, probably I think it's like 20 or 30 questions, and it's real easy. Like, see, I always get stuck on me, oh, I'm going to name 3 things and repeat them, and now we're having a conversation, and you're asking me to repeat those 3 things, and I'm like, oh my God, I wasn't even listening to you. So, paying attention to those things. But yeah, there is a lot out there. Every 65 seconds, someone is developing Alzheimer's. The numbers are now, I think, 5.7 million. Last year it was 5.4. South Carolina has over 89,000 individuals that we know of with the disease. And we are the highest in the United States for the death rate. Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask you. Why is South Carolina so high for that?
So part of it is a lot of people are coming here and retiring here, so therefore they're dying here. Not necessarily that South Carolina is causing or creating or anything like that. And the other thing is just that better understanding for the coroners and when someone dies. So a friend of mine, her grandfather died of pneumonia, and that's what they put on his death certificate. The secondary was Alzheimer's, and he may have developed pneumonia even if he didn't have Alzheimer's, but he probably would have been able to fight off the pneumonia had it not been for the Alzheimer's. So it's just the way they're changing, some of the people, the way they're changing it and like what the initial cause of death is. You know, yes, the person had a stroke, secondary Alzheimer's. Well, that person probably wouldn't have had a stroke had they not had this disease. Failure to thrive. Well, most people don't just decide to not eat. It was caused from that disease. So it's just the way that they're changing on the death certificates, which is good. Not necessarily for South Carolina right now, but it's good that they're recognizing what's going on.
This might be too long of a question for today, but at first, in one part you said, have them take part in life decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on you said, don't tell them they're even going to the doctor till right before.
So in the beginning of the disease, I'm still able to make choices of whether it's for my health care, especially if I'm just been diagnosed and I'm still, I could still work and drive and all of that stuff. So that I'm still able to make those choices. In the later stages of the disease, when they now no longer have the capacity to make any kind of healthcare decision, or now there's just such a worry, because and everyone with Alzheimer's is so completely different. So some people, they are always dealing with an issue. My loved one still wants to drive, and the other person's like, oh my God, my loved one just gave me the keys and said, I don't want the car anymore. So everyone is different. So if they're so just anxious about where are we going, what are we doing, you don't want to add to that by saying, you have a doctor's appointment on Friday. Well, now every minute of every day, you're going to hear about that. And now you're like, oh my God, why did I say that? Versus, and a lot of times there's this just anxiety of getting them to leave the house, period. And so if you tell them, we have a doctor's appointment on Friday, now there's an anxiety of like, oh, are we leaving today? Is it going to happen today? Versus, okay, boom, it's surprise, we're going to the doctors. Or not necessarily the doctors, it could be to anything.
So it still boils down, life with my mother with Alzheimer's and my 87-year-old father, it's like living between landmines and playing whack-a-mole. So,
yes.
So, yeah.
That is perfect. And one of the caregivers in my group, she was saying, she goes, I've become like a ninja in the morning because, and we joked about it because she goes, when we first met each other, we just kind of smiled and, did niceties. And now we're at a dinner group and they were like, and now we're talking about not flushing the toilet in the morning so their husband doesn't wake up, so that they can go downstairs and have a cup of coffee in peace. And so she goes, I know which floorboards squeak, so I'm like, and she's like, because if he hears that creak, he's up, and now it's, 20 questions, it's now I have to do and be and take care. So, but yeah, it is, it's playing whack-a-mole between landmines. Because today you're like, woo, I got it, and then you're like, you tried the same thing 30 minutes later, and you're like, oh crap, that just blew up in my face. Man.
How do you feel about telling somebody that they've been diagnosed with dementia if they don't know? Is the doctor the one that should tell them, or should they be told?
Well, yes, because if I had cancer or whatever, I would want to know. Now, with my dementia, I'm probably going to forget that I was told I have this disease. And I'm probably going to tell you, you're full of it, and I am fine. And so we just, yes, we'll carry on with that. Physicians should. Now, there was a survey years ago done, and I think it was like 43% of the people who have dementia on their medical records were never disclosed that they had dementia. Imagine if that was pick a disease, anything else. You don't know you have it. You can still live a good life even with Alzheimer's and dementia. It is just a different version of your life. you don't have to tell them every single time, see, it's the dementia, I told you. You know, you don't need, it doesn't need to be like that, but you don't necessarily always have to even say the D word or the A word. It could just be like, you know, it's the issue with your memory or your brain. Because it's more than the memory. So it's a brain disease. And to call it what it is, so that I feel that when you say it and you own it, it makes things just a teeny bit better when you're going through it. So that it's because of this. You know, it's not them. That's not who they are or what they would do. It's this disease. You know, you don't, like I said, you don't have to constantly say it, but they should know. Because then now, if I don't know, like my doctor didn't tell me, but told my husband, and now I'm doing all these things that are way out of character for me, and I'm feeling, how can I not tie my shoe? How can I not do this? And he's doing, and then it's like, well, what's wrong with me? Why is this happening to me? And then there's a lot of just like, la, 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 we're not gonna talk about it, but it's like the elephant is all up in the room, and we're just ignoring it, and then we don't understand, you know, the grandkids are like, oh, I don't know what's wrong with me, Mom. Well, let's call it what it is. She has a brain disease. And this affects, you know, she can't take you to the zoo like she used to anymore. And to not be ashamed of it, because there is a stigma still with it. It's obvious. But to try to not have that stigma. Yes?
Another question. If you have dementia, will it ever just stay the same, or does it progress where you just all the time and you know that it's going to get worse and worse and worse?
It is a progressive disease, so dementia does continue to progress, and symptoms and behaviors do worsen. At the point where where the dementia is really taken over, the individual with the disease no longer recognizes that that is what's going on. So they're in their own reality. That is typically when the families are having the toughest time. Because in the beginning, we're like, we're in it together, we got this, I'm helping you out, we're good. We don't really need much of anything because our life is still the same. And then with some people, it is a slow, gradual, little bit. Others, it's like diagnosed, boom, what the heck happened? But we're good. And then in the middle to the middle late part of the disease, when that individual is basically in their own world, that is when the families are having the most difficult time, because now Mama doesn't recognize me anymore. My husband thinks I'm the maid and not his wife. That was my father-in-law's father. He's like, the maid is sleeping in the bed and your mom is going to be upset. I was like, oh, goodness. And she was like, oh, I'm sorry, I just needed to take a nap. And she just went along with it. But that is usually when it's toughest for the family, is when the disease progresses to the point where that recognizing, and a lot of times they may not remember you as the daughter, the wife, the husband, but they know that you love them and they feel that, and that's where this comes into play the most, is I don't really know you, but I know that you care for me and love me, so you must love me too.
I did have a situation where my mother-in-law, I was taking care of her, and she left the house. And We have a long driveway, and she's about, by the time I heard the door go like this, I'm out the door after her, and she was very physically well. So she was a fast runner, and she was running, and I was running after her. By the time she got to the road, cars were stopping, and I got a hold of her, and she looked at me. I know my face was not happy.
Oh, yeah.
You're saying that I should have had the smile on my face at the time?
Not in an emergency situation.
That would have been hard to do, but actually, I should, even in that situation, it would have been best if I would have gone, come on, let's go look at the house. Because she knew, it was like she was a 2-year-old and I wanted to spank her.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the feeling,
Yeah.
You should have done that.
Yeah, oh no, especially a situation like that where she could have gotten, it's a danger. You're not going to be like, oh mama, you're doing that wrong, you could get hurt. No, you're gonna grab and be like, what are you doing? And then that's when, after your initial reaction of safety, then it's okay, how can I force myself to be like, let's go in and get a cup of coffee. And like a lot of tongue biting and teeth grinding but obviously if say she wasn't going to get hurt, she was just out there walking and there was no danger, but she didn't need, no ma'am, no. In that situation, that's when we have to try to be like, okay, let me put this fake face on so I can redirect her and maybe I'll walk with her a little bit further, we'll talk about the flowers in the ground, and then we'll go into the house. Obviously, if it's a danger, you're reacting, which for obvious reasons. But a lot of times especially if I've always been an outdoor person and I love to garden and I loved all the stuff that happens outside, I will probably never leave my house. But if I've always done that and now I'm the caregiver, I'm not an outdoor person. So my mind doesn't go into, oh, maybe we should go outside on this nice sunny day. I'm doing what I do in the house. Meanwhile, they're like, I should be outside doing. And so that, again, we're taking ourselves out of our comfort zone and forcing and be like, okay, we need to have some scheduled outside time.
She said she was going home.
Yeah.
That's what she said.
Oh, yes.
So,
Jamie, you're a terrific communicator.
thank you.
Keep up the good work. Now tell us, how did you get aligned with Alzheimer's?
It'll be 5 years now in June. The only place that would hire me when I got out of college from Massachusetts down here was a nursing home. So I started out in the nursing home, which I never thought I would be working in a nursing home, but I was in social services there, and I was like, oh, I love it. And then I investigated nursing homes, and then a guy that worked in that office became the vice president of programs for the Alzheimer's Association here. And when the woman who was before me, Marjorie, when she retired, he called me and said, hey, would you wanna? So it's who you know. But
First name.
Yeah. Yes. So, and then I've always enjoyed, like, in my other roles, jobs, anytime there was any kind of education and things like that, I enjoyed that. So when I knew that this was going to be my primary role here, being an educator, which I used to want to be a teacher for kids. But here I am. But yeah, so I've enjoyed it. I love what I do. And I thank you all for being here on your...
fortunate that we have a speaker who would be glad to stay so long and answer our questions.